The rain-slicked streets of a forgotten industrial town gleamed under the sodium lamps, casting long shadows that swallowed the edges of the world. In the dim glow of a corner payphone booth, a little girl, no older than 8, huddled against the glass, her small frame shaking not just from the chill but from the terror etched into her wide eyes. She clutched a crumpled photo to her chest, her breaths coming in ragged gasps as headlights swept past indifferent. Her mother was gone, vanished into the night after a frantic call from the hospital, leaving Emma alone with nothing but a promise whispered in haste. "Find Nate. He'll remember." But the town was vast, and she was so small her sneakers worn thin from wandering blocks that felt like miles. A distant siren wailed, and she pressed closer to the booth, whispering to herself, "Please come find me." The rumble started low, like thunder rolling in from the horizon, a deep, guttural growl that vibrated through the pavement and into her bones. Emma froze, peering through the rain-streaked glass as a lone motorcycle cut through the downpour, its chrome accents flashing like lightning. The rider, a broad-shouldered man in weathered leather, pulled up abruptly, his bike idling with a throaty purr that drowned out the storm. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the patter of rain on his helmet. Removing it, he revealed a face scarred by time and trials. Nate Brooks, 39 years old, his dark hair matted, eyes hollow from the fog that had claimed his mind. He didn't know why he'd stopped. Instinct, perhaps, or the pull of something buried deep. As he dismounted, his boots splashing in puddles, he approached the booth slowly, like a shadow uncoiling. "Kid," he said, voice gravelly from disuse. "You lost?" Emma's eyes locked onto his, recognition flickering in hers, while his remained blank, a void where memories should be. She stepped out, rain soaking her thin jacket, and extended the photo with trembling hands. It was creased and faded, but the image was clear. A younger Nate, grinning broadly, steadying a wobbly bicycle, as a tiny Emma pedaled for the first time, her arms bandaged from some playground tumble, both of them laughing under a sun-drenched sky. "You're him," she whispered, voice breaking. "Uncle Nate, Mum said you'd come. She said the promise. It never breaks." Nate stared at the photo, his calloused fingers brushing the edges as if testing its reality. Nothing stirred in his mind, no flash of that day, no recollection of the scraped knees or the ice cream reward afterward. The surgery had stolen it all. 5 years ago, a motorcycle wreck had cracked his skull, and the doctors had pieced him back together. But the man who emerged was a stranger to himself. He remembered the roar of engines, the brotherhood of the Iron Promise crew, the tattoos inked with oaths of loyalty, but faces, names, the warmth of a child's trust, gone erased like chalk in the rain. Yet as he held the photo, a tremor started in his hands, spreading up his arms like an electric current. His chest tightened, breath hitching, and unbidden tears welled in his eyes, spilling hot down his cheeks. He didn't understand it, couldn't name the ache blooming in his core, but his body knew. It wept for a bond he couldn't recall. Emma watched him, hope warring with fear. "You taught me to ride. You said you'd always be there, like family. Mom's in trouble at the hospital. They say she's not waking up and the bad men they're coming for her." Her words tumbled out, fragments of a story too big for her voice. Nate's gaze shifted from the photo to her face, seeing echoes there, the curve of a smile, the spark in her eyes that tugged at something primal. He knelt to her level, the rain pooling around them, and wiped his eyes roughly. I don't remember, kid, but this..." He tapped the photo, his voice cracking. "This feels real. If she's family, then you're family. And family rides together." In that moment, as thunder cracked overhead, a forgotten promise flickered to life, not in his mind, but in the loyalty that had always defined him. It would pull him back from the abyss, rallying shadows of his past into a force unbreakable. The hospital loomed on the outskirts of town, a squat brick building lit by harsh fluorescence that buzzed like angry hornets. Nate wheeled his bike into the lot, Emma clinging to his back, her small arms wrapped tight around his waist as if anchoring him to the present. The scent of antiseptic hit him first, sharp and sterile, mingling with the faint tang of his own leather jacket, still damp from the ride. Nurses glanced up from their stations, their faces a blur of concern and curiosity, as he strode through the sliding doors, Emma's hand in his. "We're here for Sarah Brooks," he said to the receptionist, the name slipping from his lips unbidden, pulled from the photo's faded inscription. How did he know it? The woman behind the desk frowned, checking her screen. "Immediate family only, and you are?" "Her brother," Nate replied, the words tasting foreign, yet right, his hand tightening around Emma's. The tremor hadn't left him. It hummed beneath his skin, a reminder that some things survived the wreckage. They led him to a quiet room down a sterile corridor where machines beeped in rhythmic vigil. Sarah lay there, pale and still, tubes snaking from her arms, her face a mirror of Emma's but lined with exhaustion. Whispers of overdose and assault hung in the air, vestiges of violence that no one would detail. Emma climbed onto the bed's edge, stroking her mother's hand. "She fought them, Uncle Nate, the ones who took our home, but you promised you'd protect us." Nate sank into a chair, the photo now tucked into his vest pocket, pressing against his heart like a talisman. A doctor entered, clipboard in hand, his white coat crisp under the lights. "Mr. Brooks, your sister's stable, but the trauma. It's complicated. And your records show amnesia from that accident. How did you even get here?" Nate met the man's eyes, steady despite the void inside. "Doesn't matter how. Matters that I'm here now." The doctor nodded slowly, pulling up a chair. "There's something you should know. Emotional memory. It's different. It lives in the body, not just the brain. That photo? It might be the key. It could bring pieces back, if you're willing to chase them." As the night deepened, Nate sat vigil, the hospital's hum fading into the background. Outside, his bike waited like a faithful steed, ready for the road ahead. He didn't remember the promise, sworn over beers with his Iron Promise brothers, to watch over Sarah after their parents' crash, to be the Uncle Emma never knew she needed. But his hands still trembled when he touched the photo. Tears still came without warning. It was enough. In the quiet hours, as Emma dozed against his shoulder, Nate felt the first stirrings of purpose. The crew would hear, old oaths calling them from dusty garages and desert runs. They were family chosen in fire, bound by honor that time couldn't erase. And for Sarah, for Emma, he'd ride into whatever darkness awaited, reclaiming the man he'd lost one fragment at a time. The first light of dawn crept through the blinds, painting stripes across the room. Nate stood, stretching his aching limbs, the weight of the unknown settling like dust on his leathers. Emma stirred, blinking up at him. "You remember now?" He shook his head, but a faint smile cracked his stoic facade. "Not yet, but I feel it, and that's a start." As they stepped into the morning air, crisp with the promise of a new day, the rumble of distant engines echoed. His brothers, sensing the call. The journey had begun, not with clarity but with the unbreakable thread of loyalty, weaving through the scars to mend what was broken. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist that clung to the hospital parking lot like a reluctant ghost. Nate's boots crunched on the gravel as he walked Emma to his bike, her small hand swallowed in his. The air carried the sharp bite of dew on metal, mixed with the faint, acrid scent of exhaust from idling trucks on the nearby highway. He swung his leg over the seat, the leather creaking under his weight, and lifted Emma onto the front, securing her with a spare jacket tied around her waist. "Hold on tight, kid," he murmured, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling in his chest. She nodded, eyes bright with a trust he didn't earn but couldn't refuse. The engine roared to life, a beast awakening, and they peeled out, the wind whipping their faces as the town blurred into a streak of faded billboards and rusted silos. Nate didn't head home, wherever that was now, a vague apartment in the shadow of the old steel mill, filled with boxes he hadn't unpacked since the accident. Instead, instinct guided him to the edge of town, where the Iron Promise clubhouse squatted like a fortress of weathered brick and chain-link fence. The place was a relic, walls scarred from bar fights and brotherhood oaths, the air thick with the ghosts of engines long silenced. He killed the bike outside the gate, the sudden quiet amplifying the distant hum of cicadas. Emma slid off, staring at the mural painted on the side. A roaring eagle clutching a broken chain, symbol of the freedom they'd fought for in desert sands and back-alley brawls. "This is where you belong," she said softly, as if reading the pull in his posture. Inside, the clubhouse smelled of stale coffee and motor oil, the kind that seeped into your skin and never washed out. A few early risers looked up from the scarred oak table. Jax, the wiry veteran with a prosthetic leg from their last deployment. Lena, the sharp-eyed mechanic who'd patched more than bikes, and old Timer, grizzled and silent, nursing a mug that hadn't held anything but black brew in years. Their eyes narrowed on Nate, then softened at the sight of Emma peeking from behind him. "Brooks," Jax grunted, pushing back his chair with a scrape that echoed like a challenge. "Heard you rode in like a damn phantom last night. What's the play?" Nate pulled the photo from his pocket, laying it flat on the table under the harsh glow of a hanging bulb. The image stared back, him, younger, unscarred, with Emma's bandaged arms and that shared laugh frozen in time. His fingers hovered, the tremor returning like an old friend, making the paper flutter. "This girl, Emma. She's Sarah's daughter, my sister's. I don't remember a damn thing about them, but this," he tapped it hard, "this hits like a gut punch. Sarah's in the hospital, hurt bad. Something about bad men taking their home. And Emma was out in the rain, alone, looking for me because of some promise I made." The room went still, the weight of his words settling like dust after a storm. Timer leaned forward, his eyes tracing the photo's edges, recognition dawning slow. "Sarah. Yeah, I remember her. After your folks went down in that crash, you swore on the club's Bible. We'd all have her back. Iron promise, don't forget. You rode out to fix her roof when the rains came, taught the kid to ride that pink bike with the streamers, said it was family, blood or not." His voice was a low rumble, pulling threads from the fog in Nate's mind. Not images, but feelings. The warmth of a grill at a clubhouse barbecue, the sting of a fresh tattoo, the nod of heads sealing oaths in the dead of night. Jax stood, clapping a hand on Nate's shoulder, the grip firm as rebar. "Amnesia or not, brother, you're still you. That wreck took your head but not your heart. If Sarah's in trouble, we ride. Who's after her?" Emma stepped forward then, her voice small but fierce, cutting through the smoke-hazed air. "Men in suits. They came to our house, said Mom owed money from Dad's old debts, but it was more, they roughed her up, left marks. She called you Uncle Nate before she couldn't." The words hung heavy, vestiges of aggression unspoken, the kind that twisted justice into knots. Lena crossed her arms, her grease-stained fingers drumming a rhythm on her bicep. "Sounds like the Vipers, that crew out of the city, shaking down folks for their loan shark game. Corrupt as hell got badges in their pockets to look the other way." Nate's jaw tightened, a spark igniting in the void, anger pure and unremembered, fueling the tremor into resolve. He didn't recall the Vipers' snarls or the turf wars that scarred the highways, but the protectiveness surged like adrenaline, his body remembering the fight even if his mind lagged. "Then we end it, quiet. No guns, no blood, just truth and our word. Get the word out. Every brother, every sister. We ride at dusk." The clubhouse stirred to life, phones buzzing with texts, engines coughing awake in the lot. Nate watched from the doorway, Emma at his side, as the first bikes rolled up, chrome gleaming under the climbing sun, riders nodding in silent salute. Jax handed him a worn iron promise patch, the eagle's eyes fierce. "This'll bring it back, Nate, piece by piece. We don't leave family in the dust." He nodded, pinning it to his vest, the fabric pulling taut over his chest. The tremor eased, replaced by a steady hum, like the vibration of a well-tuned motor. By midday, the lot filled. 30 bikes, then 50, a convoy assembling like thunderheads on the horizon. Emma sat on a crate, swinging her legs, the fear in her eyes fading to wonder. "They're all coming? For Mom?" Nate knelt, the gravel biting his knees. "Yeah, kid. Because promises like ours, they're the chains that hold us together." He didn't remember swearing it, but saying it now felt like truth, etched deeper than any scar. As the sun dipped toward afternoon, casting long shadows across the fence, Nate felt the first fracture in the fog, a whisper of laughter, the squeak of training wheels, the taste of victory and small triumphs. It wasn't memory yet, but it was hope, raw and riding hard. The air thickened with anticipation, the scent of revving engines mingling with the earthy promise of rain on the wind. Nate mounted his bike, Emma secure behind him now, her arms around his waist like a lifeline. The crew formed ranks, a wall of leather and loyalty, headlights piercing the gathering dusk. Jax raised a fist, the signal rippling through the line. Engines bellowed in unison, a roar that shook the ground, drowning out doubts. They rolled out as one, tires humming on asphalt, bound for the hospital and whatever shadows waited beyond. Nate led, the photo burning against his heart, his body leading where his mind feared to tread. In the Brotherhood's thunder, the lost pieces stirred, ready to claim their place. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The convoy sliced through the twilight like a blade of shadow and steel, engines thrumming in a symphony that echoed off the canyon walls lining the highway. Nate led the pack, his bike cutting the wind with a precision born of muscle memory. Emma's small form pressed against his back, her breath steady now amid the storm of noise. The air rushed past, cool and laced with the metallic tang of impending rain, whipping his hair and tugging at the edges of his vest, where the iron promise patch gleamed faintly in the fading light. Behind him, the brothers and sisters rode in tight formation, 50 strong, their headlights forming a glowing serpent that stretched into the distance, a testament to oaths forged in fire and forgotten wars. Jax flanked his left, Lena to the right, their bikes humming like guardians, while Timer brought up the rear, his grizzled presence an anchor against the unknown. Nate's mind raced, fragments teasing the edges of the void, the vibration of handlebars under calloused palms, the scent of desert dust after a long haul, the weight of a brother's hand on his shoulder during a midnight vigil. But Sarah's face, pale, still, sharpened everything, pulling him forward. The hospital lights appeared on the horizon, a beacon amid the sprawl of sodium-lit warehouses and forgotten rail yards. He downshifted, the engine growling in protest as they slowed, peeling into the lot with a precision that turned heads in the emergency wing. Nurses paused at windows, silhouettes against the glow, while security lights flickered on, casting stark pools of yellow across the asphalt. The convoy halted in a wide arc, bikes idling low, the collective rumble fading to a murmur that vibrated through Nate's boots. Emma slid off first, her sneakers hitting the ground with a soft thud, eyes wide at the sea of leather-clad figures dismounting around her. "They're like knights," she whispered, clutching Nate's hand, the photo now safely in his pocket, its edges worn from constant touch. He nodded, scanning the lot for threats. Shadows near the dumpsters, a sleek black sedan idling by the far curb, its tinted windows hiding watchful eyes. The Vipers. He felt it in his gut, a coil of tension that his body recognized even as his mind grasped at smoke. Jax approached, helmet tucked under his arm, his prosthetic leg clicking faintly on the pavement. "Scouts say the suits have been circling this place all day. Paid off a nurse to keep tabs on Sarah. We go in quiet, talk first, stand firm if it turns." The group moved as one, a wall of resolve parting the sliding doors. The antiseptic scent hitting like a wave, mingled now with the faint leather polish from their jackets. Whispers rippled through the lobby, patients glancing up from magazines, a janitor freezing mid-mop, the receptionist from earlier widening her eyes at the influx. Nate strode to the desk, Emma at his side, the crew fanning out behind like a protective phalanx. "Sarah Brooks," he said, voice low but carrying the weight of the road. "Room 214. We're family." The woman hesitated, fingers hovering over her keyboard, but Jax leaned in, his gaze steady. "All of us. And we're not leaving till she's safe." They filed down the corridor, boots echoing softly on linoleum, the hum of monitors growing louder with each step. At Sarah's door, two men in ill-fitting suits lounged against the wall, their postures too casual, eyes too sharp. Vipers, through and through, the kind who twisted debts into chains. One broad with a neck tattoo peeking from his collar, straightened hand drifting toward his belt. Visiting hours are over, pal. Family or not, this ain't a circus. Nate stopped inches away, his height matching the man's. The tremor in his hands now a steady pulse of defiance. He didn't flinch, didn't raise a voice, just met the stare, the photo's echo burning in his chest. She's my sister, and these are her kin. You got business, say it plain. The second Viper smirked, glancing at his partner, but the air shifted as the crew closed in, Lena cracking her knuckles with a mechanic's precision, Timer's silent glare heavier than any threat. Emma peeked from behind Nate, her voice cutting the tension like a child's truth. You hurt my mum. Uncle Nate promised to stop men like you. The words hung, simple and piercing, stirring something in the corridor's sterile hush. The tattooed one faltered, his hand dropping, while his partner muttered into a phone, voice low and urgent. Backup's 10 out. We wait. But Nate wasn't waiting. He pushed past, the door clicking open to reveal Sarah unchanged, her chest rising in shallow rhythm under the sheets. The crew filtered in, filling the room with quiet strength. Jax by the window, scanning the lot. Lena checking the IV lines with a practiced eye. Nate sank into the chair, taking Sarah's hand, its warmth a spark against his skin. The contact jolted him, a flicker not of sight but sensation, her laughter at a family cookout, the sting of tears after their parents' loss, the oath he'd sworn to shield her from the world's cruelties. It wasn't full memory, but it wove through him, tightening the fog, his tears coming hot and silent. I'm here, Sarah, he murmured, thumb tracing her knuckles. Brought the whole damn promise with me. Outside, tires screeched as more cars pulled up, Viper's reinforcements, 4 deep, spilling out with aggressive strides. The crew tensed, phones buzzing with updates from scouts on the perimeter. Jax nodded to Nate through the glass. They're boxing the lot. Want to scare us off. But fear didn't touch Nate. Instead, resolve hardened, his body aligning with the man he'd been. He stood, releasing Sarah's hand gently, and turned to Emma. Stay with your mum. Tell her Uncle Nate's making it right. She nodded, climbing onto the bed, her small hand mirroring his earlier gesture. The confrontation brewed in the hallway, voices rising as security hovered uncertainly, outmatched by the swelling tide of loyalty. The lead Viper barked demands, "Clear out or we call the real law." But Timer stepped forward, his voice a gravelly anchor. "We are the law here, iron promise. You touch family, you answer to us." No fists flew yet. It was a standoff of wills, the air thick with the unspoken code that violence was the last resort, truth the first strike. Nate faced them squarely, the tremor now a forge in his veins, fueling words he didn't know he owned. Whatever debt Sarah carries, it's not yours to collect like this. Walk away, or we expose every dirty hand you've shaken, from the badges to the banks. Doubt flickered in the Viper's eyes, the weight of 50 unyielding gazes pressing like an invisible force. One shifted, whispering to his boss, the sedan engines revving in retreat outside. As rain began to patter against the windows, streaking the glass like tears, the suits backed down, slinking toward the exit with muttered curses. The crew exhaled as one, the tension uncoiling into vigilant watch. Nate returned to Sarah's side, the first real fracture in his amnesia blooming, not a flood, but a trickle. The day he'd taught Emma to ride, the pink bike's bell tinkling, Sarah's proud smile. It hurt, sharp as a fresh scar, but it healed too, binding him tighter to the promise. Hours slipped by in the room's hush, the rain a steady drum against the roof washing the night clean. Emma dozed, head on Sarah's arm while the crew rotated shifts, their presence a shield unbreakable. Nate stared out at the storm-lashed lot, bikes glistening under the downpour, and felt the pull deepen. The Vipers weren't done. Shadows lingered in their retreat, hinting at deeper corruption, strings pulled from city halls and shadowed alleys. But for now the hospital stood safe, a fragile sanctuary held by loyalty's grip. As lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the eagle on his patch, Nate whispered to the darkness, "I remember enough to fight." The road ahead twisted, fraught with revelations, but he rode it now with eyes opening, heart leading the way. The storm raged on, sheets of rain lashing the hospital windows like accusations from the night sky. Nate leaned against the cool glass, his breath fogging the pain in slow, deliberate puffs, watching the lot where bikes stood sentinel, water streaming off their frames in rivulets that mirrored the tears he'd shed earlier. The crew had settled into a watchful rhythm, Jax coordinating perimeter checks via hushed radio chatter, Lena tinkering with a loose bolt on her ride under the awning, her tools clinking like distant Morse code. Emma slept fitfully on the fold-out chair beside Sarah's bed, her small chest rising and falling in sync with the monitor's steady beep. The room felt smaller now, charged with the aftermath of the standoff, the air heavy with the scent of damp leather and the faint underlying sharpness of fear not yet extinguished. Nate's hand drifted to his pocket, fingers closing around the photo's edges, now soft from the rain's embrace. The image pressed against his palm, a tactile anchor pulling at the frayed threads of his past. Another flicker came unbidden. Not a full scene, but a sensation. The rough weave of Sarah's old sweater as he hugged her after their parents' wreck, the way her shoulders shook under his arms, the vow he'd made in that dim living room, lit only by a single lamp's glow. "I'll keep you safe," he'd said, the words sealing a pact with the Iron Promise brothers who'd gathered like shadows, their nods a chorus of unbreakable intent. The memory ghosted through him, leaving a hollow ache, but it sharpened his resolve. The Viper's retreat was temporary. He could feel it in the prickle at the back of his neck, the same instinct that had saved him in desert ambushes he couldn't recall. A soft knock shattered the quiet. The doctor from earlier entered, his coat rumpled, eyes shadowed by fatigue. He glanced at the crew members posted like statues, then focused on Nate. "Mr. Brooks, we need to talk, privately." Nate nodded, stepping into the hall where fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting long shadows that danced with the rain's rhythm outside. The doctor pulled a tablet from his pocket, its screen glowing faintly. "Your sister's tests. They're inconclusive, traces of something in her system. Not just the assault, but something deliberate. Sedatives, maybe, to keep her quiet. And the police? They've been dragging their feet. Word is, the Vipers have pull with the local precinct. Debts rewritten as favors, reports buried like yesterday's news." Nate's jaw clenched, the tremor returning to his hands. But this time it fueled a quiet fury, steady as the engine's idle. "So what? We expose them, get real law involved." The doctor shook his head, voice dropping to a whisper. "It's deeper. The chief's office, tied to city contracts, the kind that line pockets while folks like Sarah lose everything. Your amnesia. It might protect you, but chasing this could drag it all back. The wreck that caused it? Witnesses said Vipers tampered with your bike, payback for crossing their turf. If you push, they push harder." The words landed like gravel under tires, stirring dust in Nate's mind. He leaned against the wall, the cool tile seeping through his shirt, and closed his eyes. Flashes assaulted him, the screech of metal on asphalt 5 years prior, the world spinning in a blur of pain and betrayal, brothers pulling him from the wreckage with shouts that echoed like thunder. Iron Promise had sworn vengeance then, but the fog had stolen his fight, leaving him adrift until Emma's photo reignited the spark. "Doesn't change a thing," he said finally, eyes snapping open, meeting the doctor's gaze with the unyielding steel of a man reclaiming his edges. "Family's worth the scars. Tell me where to start." Back in the room, Nate gathered the inner circle, Jax, Lena, Timer, around Sarah's bed, their voices a low murmur over the rain's patter. Emma stirred but didn't wake, her trust a silent vote of confidence. "The doc says it's corruption from the top," Nate relayed. The photo laid out like a map on the bedside table. "Vipers aren't just thugs. They've got the law twisted around their finger. Sarah's debts? Fabricated, tied to your old man's business after he crossed them. We need proof. Ledgers, witnesses, something to blow it open without fists." Jax rubbed his chin, prosthetic leg shifting with a soft whir. "I know a guy, ex-cop, bounced for asking too many questions, runs a dive bar on the east side, keeps records in his safe, but getting there means riding through Viper territory. They'll be waiting." Lena nodded, wiping her hands on a rag, the scent of oil clinging to her like a second skin. "I'll rig the bikes. Extra lights, reinforced frames. We go in pairs, draw them out. Timer, you call the old network. See if any badges owe us from the war days." Timer grunted agreement, his eyes distant, pulling from a well of loyalties forged in sands far from this rainy night. As they planned, the storm outside intensified, wind howling through the eaves like a warning. Nate paced to the window, watching shadows move in the lot, perhaps just rain-slicked illusions, or scouts circling back. His body tensed, the emotional memory surging, the pride in Sarah's eyes when he'd fixed her roof, the way Emma's laughter had filled the clubhouse during barbecues, binding them tighter than blood. It wasn't revenge he craved, but justice, the poetic kind, where truth cut deeper than any blade, redeeming the broken oaths of a cynical world. "We ride at first light," he decided, voice carrying the weight of rediscovered command. "Expose the rot, protect what's ours, no more running." The crew dispersed to their posts, leaving Nate alone with his sister and niece. He sat, taking Sarah's hand again, the warmth seeping into his chilled fingers. Another piece clicked. The day of the photo, Emma's scraped knees from a fall, his gentle encouragement as she pedaled into independence, Sarah snapping the shot with tears of joy. The amnesia cracked further, pain lancing through like sunlight piercing clouds, but it brought clarity. He was Nate Brooks, guardian of promises, leader of the chosen family that rode through hell unbroken. Dawn crept in grey and reluctant, the rain easing to a drizzle that beaded on the windows like unshed tears. The convoy reformed in the lot, engines coughing awake, headlights piercing the mist. Nate lifted Emma onto his bike, her eyes bright with the thrill of motion, while Sarah stirred faintly, a whisper of hope in her pallor. As they rolled out, the highway unfolding like a vein of silver, Nate felt the fog lift incrementally, each mile a step toward wholeness. The Viper's shadows loomed ahead, but so did the light of redemption, powered by loyalty's unyielding roar. If this chapter moved you, smash that like button. It helps these stories of honor and heart reach more riders on the road. The highway unfurled like a ribbon of cracked asphalt under the weak morning sun, the drizzle from the night giving way to a humid haze that clung to everything. Nate's bike led the vanguard, its engine a steady growl that cut through the mist. Emma's arms locked around his waist, her cheek pressed against the worn leather of his vest. The convoy followed in a disciplined wave, 50 riders strong, their formation tight as a clenched fist, headlights slicing through the fog like beacons of intent. The air whipped past, carrying the sharp scent of wet earth and distant pine, mingling with the faint, oily residue on Nate's gloves. Jax rode shotgun on his flank, the prosthetic leg's subtle shift visible even through the speed, while Lena's bike hummed beside them, her toolkit strapped secure like armor. Nate's mind churned, the doctor's words echoing over the road's rhythm. Corruption woven deep, Viper's tendrils in the precinct, debts fabricated to ensnare the vulnerable. He gripped the handlebars tighter, the vibration traveling up his arms, sinking with the persistent hum in his chest, the emotional echo that refused to fade. Another fragment surfaced unbidden, a rainy evening years back, Sarah's voice trembling over the phone, pleading for help after their father's old business tangled with the wrong crowd. He'd roared up on his bike then, the Iron Promise crew at his back, scattering shadows with nothing but their presence and unyielding word. The memory wasn't visual, not yet, just the burn of protectiveness, the nod of brothers sealing the pact anew. It steadied him, turning the fog into fuel. The east side of town loomed ahead, a labyrinth of sagging warehouses and flickering neon signs, where the highway bled into narrower streets lined with chain link and graffiti-scarred walls. Viper territory, Jax had warned, the kind of place where eyes watched from every alley, and loyalty was bought with whispers or worse. Nate signaled a slowdown, the convoy peeling off into a side road that led to the dive bar, a squat neon-lit hole called the Anchor, its sign buzzing faintly like a trapped insect. They parked in the shadowed lot, bikes forming a perimeter that gleamed under the overcast sky, engines ticking as they cooled. Emma dismounted, stretching her legs, her eyes scanning the faded mural on the bar's side. An anchor wrapped in barbed wire, a nod to chains broken and reformed. Inside, the air was thick with the stale tang of spilled beer and cigarette smoke, the jukebox crooning a low blues tune that vibrated through the scarred wooden floor. A handful of patrons hunched over their drinks, glancing up warily as the door swung open, admitting the group in a rush of damp air. The bartender, an ex-cop named Harlan, broad-shouldered with a salt-and-pepper beard and eyes that had seen too many buried truths, wiped a glass with deliberate slowness. He recognized Jack's immediately, a flicker of old camaraderie crossing his face. "Iron promise. Been a spell. What brings the thunder inside?" Nate stepped forward, the floorboards creaking under his boots. Emma close at his heel like a shadow. He pulled the photo from his pocket, laying it on the bar under the dim light of a hanging lamp. Sarah Brooks, my sister. Vipers roughed her up, left her in the hospital with something in her system to keep her down. Doc says it's tied to old debts, fabricated ones. We need proof, ledgers, anything to show the badges they've bought. Harlan's eyes traced the image, lingering on the frozen laughter, then met Nate's gaze. Recognition dawned, mixed with sorrow. "Brooks, the wreck. Thought you'd vanished into your own head. Sarah came here months back, scared. Said the Vipers were twisting her late husband's loans into nooses. I kept notes, off the books, but getting them means stirring the hive." The bar fell quieter, the jukebox fading to static as if sensing the shift. Jax leaned in, voice low. "We're ready. Point the way." Harlan nodded, disappearing into a back room, emerging with a battered ledger wrapped in oilcloth, its pages yellowed and edges frayed. Names, dates, payoffs to the chief's office, enough to unravel their game. But they know you're sniffing. Scouts spotted your ride crossing the bridge. As he handed it over, Nate's fingers brushed the cover and a jolt hit him. The scent of ink and secrecy, the late-night huddle in this very bar after the accident, brothers vowing to shield Sarah while he recovered. The tremor returned, tears pricking unbidden, his body mourning the lost years even as it reclaimed them. Outside, the lot stirred, engines revving from a side street, 3 black sedans rolling in slow predatory arcs, Vipers spilling out with purposeful strides, their suits rumpled from the night's rain. No weapons drawn yet, but the threat hung thick, like the humidity pressing down. The lead one, a wiry man with a scar bisecting his lip, sauntered forward, eyes locking on the ledger in Nate's hand. "Hand it over, Brooks, or we make this messy. Your sister's already paid enough." The crew formed a line, unyielding, Lena's hand on her wrench like a talisman, Timer's glare a silent storm. Emma clutched Nate's leg, her whisper fierce. "Don't let them win, Uncle Nate. You promised." Nate stepped ahead, ledger tucked secure, his voice steady as the road they'd ridden. "This ends the lies. Sarah's debts, forged to cover your tracks. The chief's cut? We'll light it up for all to see." The Viper sneered, advancing, but Jax intercepted, prosthetic leg planted firm. "Walk, or face the truth you buried." Tension coiled, the air electric with restraint. The code of iron promise demanding justice over chaos, words sharper than blows. The scarred man hesitated, glancing at his crew, the weight of 50 stares pressing like an invisible tide. Rain began again, light at first, pattering on the sedan's roofs, then building to a steady drum that mirrored the pounding in Nate's chest. A standoff stretched, seconds feeling like miles, until distant sirens wailed, real ones perhaps tipped by Harlan's quiet call. The Vipers faltered, retreating to their cars with curses swallowed by the downpour, tires splashing through puddles as they fled. The convoy exhaled, mounting up as the lot cleared, the ledger now a weapon forged in loyalty. Nate lifted Emma, her smile breaking through the clouds in his mind, and gunned the engine. The roar a declaration. Back at the hospital, they'd deliver it to the doctor, loop in uncorrupted ears, perhaps a federal contact from the old war network. But as they rode, the fragments multiplied. Sarah's grateful hug after a Viper shakedown averted, Emma's first bike ride under his steady hands, the club's oath echoing in desert winds. The amnesia fractured further, pain yielding to purpose, each revelation a stitch mending the man he'd become. The sun broke through sporadically, casting fleeting beams on the wet road, illuminating the eagle patch on Nate's back like a promise etched in light. Sarah stirred in her dreams, perhaps sensing the tide turning while the crew rode tighter, bound by the honor that outlasted scars. The Viper's web trembled, but deeper threads waited, City Hall shadows, perhaps even ties to the wreck that stole his past. Nate felt it all converging, his body leading the charge, heart reclaiming the wheel. In the Brotherhood's thunder, redemption rolled on, unbreaking. The hospital's emergency entrance swallowed the convoy like a maw of flickering lights and echoing halls, the bike's engines fading to a low growl before cutting silent in the lot. Nate dismounted first, the gravel crunching under his boots, slick from the intermittent drizzle that hung in the air like unresolved tension. He reached back for Emma, lifting her down with hands that no longer trembled uncontrollably. The ledger tucked securely in his inner vest pocket, its weight a tangible promise against his ribs. The scent of rain-soaked asphalt mingled with the faint, rubbery tang of cooling tires, while the crew fanned out, their leathers whispering as they moved, a protective cordon around the small group. Jack scanned the perimeter, his eyes sharp under the brim of his cap, while Lena slung her toolkit over her shoulder, ready for any mechanical betrayal in the shadows. Emma's sneakers splashed through a shallow puddle as she hurried beside Nate, her hand slipping into his, warm and trusting despite the chill. "Did we win, Uncle Nate? For Mom?" Her voice was a soft thread in the humid breeze, pulling at the fragments now stitching his mind back together. He squeezed her fingers gently, the contact sparking another echo. Her tiny hand in his during a long-ago walk home from school, the crunch of autumn leaves underfoot. Sarah calling from the porch with a wave that chased away the day's worries. "Not yet, kid," he replied, his gravelly tone laced with the quiet certainty of rediscovered purpose. "But we're closer. Truth's a hard road, but it leads home." Inside, the lobby buzzed with midday urgency, gurneys wheeling past, voices overlapping in clipped exchanges, but the crew's presence parted the crowd like a wake from a passing ship. The receptionist from nights before looked up, her expression shifting from wariness to reluctant respect as Nate approached the desk, the ledger's outline visible through his vest. "Sarah Brooks, and we need the doctor now." She nodded quickly, paging without question, the weight of 50 unyielding figures behind him, speaking louder than words. Harlan's contact had already paved the way, a discreet call to an old ally in the federal network, the kind of voice that cut through local rot like a knife through fog. The doctor met them in the corridor, his tablet clutched like a shield, eyes widening at the ledger as Nate pulled it free under the harsh fluorescence. The pages rustled softly, revealing columns of scrawled names, dates, and sums, payoffs to badges, fabricated debts twisted into Sarah's life like barbed wire. This could change everything," the doctor murmured, flipping through with clinical precision, the air thick with the musty scent of aged paper. "Chief Harlan's signature on half of these. If we get this to the right eyes, state investigators maybe, it unravels the whole web. But the Vipers, they'll fight dirty to bury it." Nate's gaze hardened, the emotional surge cresting. A vivid pulse now, not just sensation but color. The red of Sarah's old truck as he'd towed it home after a Viper sabotage, the club's cheers sealing another layer of their oath. His chest tightened, not with loss but with the fire of reclamation. They moved to Sarah's room, the door clicking shut behind them like a vow sealed. The monitors hummed steadily, a mechanical heartbeat underscoring the quiet. Sarah lay unchanged at first glance, her face pale against the pillows, but as Nate placed the ledger on the bedside table, her eyelids fluttered, a subtle shift, like dawn breaking through storm clouds. Emma climbed onto the bed's edge, stroking her mother's arm with feather-light touches. "Mom, Uncle Nate brought help, the bad men's secrets." The crew gathered close, a circle of leather and resolve, Jack's by the door, Lena adjusting the blinds to soften the light, Timer standing sentinel like an ancient oak. Nate sank into the chair, taking Sarah's hand once more, the warmth seeping deeper now, unlocking a cascade. The fog parted further, the night of the promise, post-parents' crash. The Iron Promise clubhouse alive with the crackle of a fire pit, beers clinking in toasts of loyalty. "Blood don't make family," he'd said then, voice thick with grief, "but promises do. I'll watch over her, over the kid. You all in?" Nods had rippled through the brothers, etching the bond in ink and intent. Tears welled unbidden, spilling hot down his cheeks, but he didn't wipe them away this time. His body wept for the years stolen, the guardianship he'd abandoned in amnesia, but it rose now, fierce and whole. Sarah's fingers twitched in his grasp, eyes opening to slits, focusing on his face with hazy recognition. "Nate." Chas, her voice was a whisper, raspy from disuse, but it pierced him like sunlight. The room held its breath, the rain outside tapping a gentle rhythm on the window. "Yeah, sis, it's me. Brought the cavalry." She managed a faint smile, glancing at Emma, then the ledger. "The debts, they weren't real. Vipers forged them after your wreck, to silence us." Her words confirmed the pages, vestiges of aggression woven into financial chains, but her grip tightened, a spark of the fighter returning. The doctor bustled in, checking vitals with renewed urgency. "She's stabilizing. Whatever they dosed her with is wearing off. This evidence, it'll protect her, get real justice rolling." Word spread through the crew like exhaust from a revving engine, phones vibrating with updates, the federal contact confirming an raid team en route by evening. But shadows lingered. A nurse poked her head in, voice low. Suits outside again, asking questions, flashing badges that don't check out. Jax cracked the door, peering into the hall where two Vipers loitered, their postures feigning casualness, eyes darting like cornered animals. The air thickened with anticipation, the scent of impending confrontation mingling with the room's sterile calm. Nate stood, releasing Sarah's hand reluctantly, the photo now joined by the ledger on the table, a duo of truths demanding reckoning. He stepped into the corridor, the crew at his back, boots echoing like a drumbeat of defiance. The lead Viper turned, Scar twisting his lip into a snarl. "You think a book ends this, Brooks? We've got friends higher up." But Nate faced him squarely, the returned memories lending his stance unshakable steel. "Your friends scatter when light hits. This," he patted the ledger's hidden bulk, "exposes the rot. Walk away or ride it out in cuffs." No blows exchanged. It was a clash of wills, the Viper's gaze flickering to the swelling ranks behind Nate, the distant wail of sirens growing louder, real authority closing in. Doubt cracked their facade, the pair retreating with muttered threats, swallowed by the hall's echo. Back in the room, Sarah's color returned in faint blooms, Emma's laughter bubbling as she described the convoy's thunder. Nate watched, the fragments now a mosaic, the pink bikes wobble, Sarah's proud nod, the club's roar binding them eternal. The amnesia didn't vanish, but it yielded, emotional threads weaving redemption's tapestry. As federal lights flashed in the lot, scattering the last shadows, Nate felt the promise fulfilled, not in vengeance, but in the quiet victory of loyalty unbroken. The road to full recall stretched ahead, but with family chosen at his side, he rode it unafraid, honor's engine purring strong. The afternoon light slanted through the blinds, gilding the room in gold, a fragile peace settling as investigators arrived, the ledger vanishing into official hands. Sarah dozed now, truly resting, while Emma curled against her, the terror of nights past fading like mist under sun. Nate lingered by the window, the convoy's bikes a gleaming honor guard outside, their presence a testament to oaths that time couldn't erode. Deeper revelations waited, the wreck's full truth, perhaps ties to City Hall's underbelly. But for this moment, justice breathed, moral and unyielding. In the Brotherhood's shadow, he'd found his way back, one trembling step at a time. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the hospital room in hues of amber and rose, as if the sky itself were mending after the storm. Nate stood by the window, arms crossed over his chest, the Iron Promise patch on his vest catching the light like a badge of quiet triumph. Outside, the lot had transformed into a tableau of resilience, bikes lined up in orderly rows, their chrome dulled by the day's drizzle but unbowed, riders milling about in low conversation, sharing smokes and nods of solidarity. The federal investigators had come and gone, the ledger now fuel for a fire that would consume the Viper's web. Chief's office exposed, fabricated debts unraveled, the vestiges of aggression laid bare in sterile reports. Sirens had wailed one final time, hauling away the suits in cuffs, their snarls silenced by the weight of truth. Emma perched on the bed's edge, her small fingers tracing patterns on Sarah's blanket, the photo tucked beside her like a cherished relic. Sarah's color had deepened, her breaths even and strong, the sedative's fog lifting under the doctor's careful watch. She stirred now, eyes opening fully for the first time since the ordeal began, locking onto Nate with a clarity that bridged the years. "Nate," she whispered, voice gaining strength, reaching out a hand that he took without hesitation. The contact was electric, a conduit for the fragments he'd chased. Her tear-streaked face at their parents' graveside, the way she'd leaned on him during lean winters, the quiet nights when he'd spin tales of road adventures to soothe Emma's fears. The amnesia cracked wide, not in a rush, but a steady flow, memories flooding back like rain-swollen rivers. The pink bike's triumphant wobble, the club's fire-lit oaths, the screech of his own wreck as betrayal twisted the handlebars. Tears traced silent paths down his cheeks, but they were cathartic now, washing away the void's remnants. "Sis," he murmured, sinking to his knees beside the bed, Emma scooting closer to complete the circle. "I lost it all. The wreck took the pictures in my head, but you hurt." He nodded to Emma, voice thick with rediscovered warmth. "You brought me back. The promise. I feel every word of it now." Sarah's eyes glistened, her free hand cupping his scarred cheek, the touch evoking the boy he'd been before the roads hardened him. "You never left us, Nate. Even in the fog, you rode straight to us. Iron promise. That's us. Chosen, unbreakable." The door creaked open, admitting Jax and Lena, their faces etched with the road's wear but softened by the scene. Timer followed, carrying a thermos of strong coffee, its steam curling like incense in the room's hush. The crew had held vigil through the investigators' interrogations, their testimonies, steady, unembellished, sealing the case against the corruption. No fists had flown in the end. The ledger's ink proved mightier, exposing payoffs that snaked from precinct desks to city ledgers, freeing not just Sarah, but a dozen others tangled in the Viper's snares. "It's done," Jack said, his prosthetic leg steady as he leaned against the wall. "Feds are raiding their dens tonight. Your lead, Brooks, brought the whole damn light." Nate rose, pulling Sarah into a careful embrace, the scent of hospital linens mingling with the faint leather from his jacket. Emma hugged them both, her laughter a bright spark, cutting the emotional weight. Outside, the convoy stirred to life once more, engines rumbling in farewell, a thunderous salute that vibrated through the walls. The air carried the crisp edge of evening, laced with the promise of clear skies, as riders mounted up, headlights winking like stars igniting. Lena clapped Nate's shoulder, her grease-stained hand leaving a faint mark. "Clubhouse barbecue tomorrow. Sarah and the kid, honorary patches." Sarah smiled weakly, nodding, the first real bloom of hope in her eyes. As the sun slipped away, casting long shadows across the lot, Nate stepped out with Emma at his side, Sarah wheeled behind by a nurse, fresh air filling her lungs. The crew encircled them, a family forged in trials, their presence a shield against the world's cynicism. Nate lifted Emma onto his bike for the short ride home. Not the sterile apartment, but Sarah's modest house on the town's edge, now safe from shadows. The engine purred to life, a familiar vibration syncing with his heartbeat, memories now vivid tapestries. Desert runs with brothers, the sting of tattoos inking loyalty, the quiet vow to protect what mattered amid the roar. He didn't remember every scar, every mile, but the core, the honor, the redemption, shone clear, a legacy etched deeper than amnesia. They rode slow through twilight streets, the convoy trailing like guardians, streetlights flickering on to guide the way. Emma's arms wrapped tight, her whisper lost in the wind. "You're all back now, Uncle Nate." He nodded, throat tight, the photo safe in his pocket, a talisman of bonds reborn. Sarah followed in a borrowed club van, Jax at the wheel, her hand waving from the window. The house appeared, porchlight glowing warm, a sanctuary reclaimed. As they pulled up, the crew dismounted, forming a loose ring, voices rising in toasts and easy banter, the scent of impending rain mixing with exhaust, grounding the moment in sensory truth. Inside, the living room smelled of faint dust and homecoming, photos on the mantel stirring final echoes, family gatherings, Emma's first steps, Nate's grin frozen in time. Sarah settled on the couch, Emma curling beside her, while Nate stood in the doorway, the weight of the day settling like a well-earned rest. The Viper's empire crumbled in distant headlines, justice poetic and swift, born of loyalty's quiet power. No grand speeches, just the nod of heads, the clink of mugs, promises fulfilled in actions unspoken. Night fell gentle, stars pricking the sky as the crew lingered, stories weaving through the hours. Nate sat with Sarah, their hands linked, the amnesia a scar now, not a chain. Redemption wasn't erasure but reclamation, the courage to ride through fog, emerging whole. In the chosen family's glow, honor's legacy endured, a silent roar against the dark. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these tales of unbreakable promises touch your heart, hit that subscribe button and join the Iron Promise family for more stories of loyalty and redemption.